Be relevant in your time so that you'll be remembered when you are no more. Hello and welcome to season 2, episode 13 of our podcast series, the podcast that inspires and educates through the sharing of real life experiences. I'm Sheila, your host, and with me today is our first podcast gentleman guest, Chad Harper, joining me remotely from Brooklyn. Chad is an educator, humanitarian, businessman, songwriter, and an American rapper. Today, Chad will be sharing with us how he uses hip hop to save lives, among others. Hello, Chad, and welcome to Podcast.
Hello, Sheila. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for all the listeners. I appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure, really. So what would your favorite quote be?
My favorite quote actually comes from Gandhi, and it is, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." I choose that quote because that quote is what led me to start Hip Hop Saves Lives.
Great.
I saw hip hop was not really, when I was growing up, there's a lot of different types of hip hop. There's a lot of educational hip hop, Black empowerment hip hop, and that kind of got phased out. So I decided to start my own organization that kind of focused on intelligent hip hop, is what I like to call it.
Great. Let's quickly move on to growing up. What was it like for you?
You know, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, in the east side suburb, and where we lived was about a mile from the city limit. And once you cross that line, it was a different world. So with that exposure, it was kind of like growing up in the suburbs and the city at the same time. We had a very safe environment, but, just a mile away, it was a different story. Of course, as teenagers, you want to venture across the line and see, experience different things. And so I kind of had like the best of both worlds.
Great. Can we say that your childhood life in any way had an influence in your adult life? Yeah.
Definitely. I can say, well, first of all, it's an interesting fact about the suburb that I grew up in. It's the longest integrated city in American history. Typically in the United States, when Black people start moving in, white people will start moving out. But this suburb was designed by two German guys, I don't know how long ago, probably a couple hundred years ago, to be an integrated city, not just Black and white, but also financially, so that you had homes that were multi-million-dollar homes, and you had middle class mostly, and then you had some low income. So my high school was very diverse, racially and financial background. So that was a really great experience that I can say growing, now that I'm an adult, I really appreciate that, because I had that diversity. I had friends whose parents were millionaires. I had friends who didn't have a decent dinner every night, before they went to bed. And, that, huge range of financial background. And also, we were like 50% Black, 50% white. It gave us an opportunity to look at people for who they are. Who their personality, their talents, their thoughts and feelings, because we had friends from such diverse backgrounds.
Great. Let's talk about your humanitarian work. So you went to the business school, if I'm right, and then you worked in the entertainment industry. What happened afterwards with that?
Well, with the entertainment industry, I decided, at one point I had a record deal on the table, and the record deal fell through, which is kind of bittersweet. But to kind of just take my mind off it, after that happened, I started to volunteer for a nonprofit organization called Charity Water. Yeah. And at the time, their main focus was throwing these elaborate New York City cocktail parties, inviting celebrities and kind of upper class people. Okay. And they would use the proceeds from the donations and the money they raised from these events to drill water wells in Africa.
All right. Oh.
So through volunteering with them, I learned about the lack of clean water. not just in Africa, but other, parts of the world that have those issues. And it really kind of changed how I saw the world. It kind of sparked my desire to travel and experience other countries, other cultures, other ways of life for myself. So in my travels, I first started traveling to Haiti, and then Jamaica, and then I got to Liberia, Ghana, and I've ended up traveling to over 50 countries. But I would always, because I was a teacher of kids in New York City,
Great.
I would always find a school in the city and volunteer to teach music classes, help them write songs, record songs and music videos. So my humanitarian work first was part of Hip Hop Stage Lives, because I would always go and teach and just volunteer my time.
Okay.
But in 2016, I decided to move to East Africa. First I was in Ethiopia for about a month and a half, but settled in Kenya. Okay. And when I got to Kenya, I started my own program of mentoring kids that I would see begging on the street. There was like a really kind of fancy mall that the upscale Kenyans would hang out at, as well as tourists. And I would see these kids begging, for food or for change. And I kind of just, became their friends and would take them to local food restaurants and sit down with them and eat with them, and got to know their mothers and visited their neighborhoods and communities. And from there, I just I was known as the guy in the city as like the guy with the kids. Sometimes I'd be walking down the street and there'd be a dozen kids following me or hanging out with me. And so, I started food programs, school fees, extracurricular activities, taking them to the movies, taking them on road trips to the beach, just giving them experiences to expose them to things that were not available, to them because they were low income. Yeah.
Great. So how did you fund these projects? Did you do other jobs to fund the projects you were doing in Africa, or you were sponsored by an organization? Or
I actually had a home school in Brooklyn. Okay. So when I was living for the first year and a half, I would say, I had funding from a school in Brooklyn.
Oh, great.
And aside from working with these kids, I would also travel around East Africa and record music. Oh, cool. And I would work with hip hop artists and ask them to record songs that would introduce their community, their city, their culture to the kids back in Brooklyn at the school. So it was like a cultural exchange through music, through hip hop. And that was, I was being paid for that, and I would use part of my salary to work with the kids. And then a lot of my friends and family would see the work that I was doing and send donations over. So that helped out a lot. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I want to ask another question, but I believe that will leap into the next one. So I'm going to hold on to that until I listen to this. So how did Hip Hop Save Life movement, how did it start?
So when I was volunteering for Charity Water, the first organization, I decided to write a song about, because there was a lot of, education at their exhibits, giving people statistics about the lack of clean water and how many people in the world don't have clean water, how many children die a day from lack of clean water. So I decided to take all this information, write it down, and put it into a rhyme and record a hip hop song called If Everybody Cared. And I pressed up CDs and I took it to these events with Charity Water, and we started selling the CDs. People were really moved by the song. And I remember people asking me to take pictures of me and sign me, autograph the CD. And it was a really big impact. And I remember, one guy I was talking to who bought the CD was asking, how much does it cost, for a water well? And at the time, this organization, I think, was like $4,000 or $5,000. The guy was so moved, he was like, I'm going to write you a check for that right now. And I was like, wow, hip hop is saving lives. So that's where the name came from. It was just that experience. And then I just built on it from that very moment.
Great. You've been around Africa, a number of the countries in Africa, and there's a myth, or there's a thing that goes around that people say that Africa all the African countries are poor. Well, a few of the African countries are developing. But what do you think? Because I know I come from Africa. I've lived in Africa my adult life. And I know that there are good things in Africa. Like you can get most of the amenities you get outside of Africa there in Africa now. It's developed. For me, if you ask me, do you think is the way the world views Africa as so poor, as lacking in everything? I know that you had gone there to do a water project. But then so you've been around. What can you say to people listening to us who have never been to Africa? What can you say about Africa? Because I've had a few guests here and all they tell me they are always going to South Africa.
Right.
And I believe that is because South Africa have a few of the blacks and a few of the whites. So they feel comfortable. That is what I think. So let's educate those listening to us. Let them know that Africa is a good place to go to. It's a beautiful place. They can get whatever they have wherever they are over there as well, because you've been around. So I think it's good. You can say more about that.
Yes, as a Black American who was interested in the continent of Africa, I've traveled to 5 countries in East Africa, or 6 in East Africa and 4 in West Africa.
Great.
And people have this perception. It's so ridiculous that it's kind of mind blowing. Yeah. When I first told a couple of friends of mine that I'm moving to Africa, I had some friends say, "Well, do they have internet there?" I had a friend of mine say, "Do they have cars there?" And it was so disturbing. And I was like, my response was this: you think your life as a middle-class American is better than the president of an African country?
Yeah.
Because if you think they might not have internet or they might not have cars, then you live a more elaborate life as a middle-class American than a president of a nation in Africa.
Yeah.
And when I broke it down like that, they thought, okay, well, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I always say Africa is the wealthiest place in the world because of its natural resources. The Congo, by far, is the richest country in the world if you want to go by natural resources.
Yeah.
As far as Africa's development, it's just like any other country where you go to the capital city and you have beautiful cars and beautiful hotels and beautiful homes and beautiful restaurants and rooftop, bars. And you have everything there that you have in any other major city.
Exactly.
But if you're in Ohio and you go to a really small town, it's going to be the same in Africa. There's a lot less there. Yeah. The same way that there's a lot less in a small town in Ohio, or
Yeah, exactly.
So sure, I mean, everything is there. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go back to Hip Hop Saved Lives. Are you currently doing a project on Hip Hop Saved Life movement? What project is that?
So this is, I would have to say this is my favorite project that I've done so far in my musical career.
Okay.
It's called I Am Black American.
Okay.
And I came up with this project. It derived from my travels actually across Africa.
Okay.
Black Americans, because we've been removed so many hundreds of years, we have this fantasy of like, okay, I'm going to go back to Africa and reconnect with my roots.
Okay.
Not realizing that our ancestors left hundreds of years ago.
Okay.
So Africa has just changed since our ancestors have left, right? The world is so much more global. So you get to Africa and you realize, oh, well, it's cosmopolitan here, just like it's cosmopolitan where I'm from.
Yeah.
And a lot of the big cities are a lot less traditional than you would think,
Yeah.
So this idea of reconnecting with Africa, I came to the conclusion that it's kind of like a mental piece of knowing that we have a motherland. Going there to view, just to have the experience of, I went to a hospital and every doctor was Black.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are things that we can't experience in the United States.
Yeah.
to walk down the street and see police and not ever have to think I could be a victim because of racism.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's all these beautiful experiences that we can have by living or visiting the motherland, but to think that there's some type of picking up where my ancestors left off. No, Africa's developed over these couple hundred years, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to have these really deep cultural experiences unless you go far out into the city, far out into the up country, countryside. No, which I have, but I feel like a lot of Americans wouldn't be that comfortable, because they're used to their city life.
City life, yeah.
Right. So for me, I developed this project called I Am Black American, because I was like, the closest thing for me to understand African culture is to understand my ancestors from Africa and the life they lived in the United States for the past 400 years. And as I go back and learn through the Black Americans that were here, then I can understand how Africa was 400 years ago when they left. And that's the best way for me to understand it. Going back to Africa today, you're not going to get that experience. It was 400 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided to create this project to trace my roots, all the way back and document and share experiences of Africans who lived in the Americas.
Okay.
And that will give me maybe the connection that I'm looking to have with Africa,
Yeah. Have you had, I know you've had a lot of successes with this movement. Have you had any challenges with the movement as you worked with it?
Yeah, hip hop has been viewed in a lot of negative ways. When people hear hip hop, they think violence, they think aggression towards women, selling drugs, and all these kind of negative gang-like things, which that's a part of hip hop, but if I always start with the origin of hip hop. Hip hop was birthed from a gang peace treaty. So sure, hip hop derived from gang life in the early 70s, but it came about when gangs were tired of the fighting, gangs were tired of the killing, and they made a peace treaty and decided to party in the park every Friday and Saturday night. And all these gangs would come together, and that would be the only time they had peace. They would dance, they would play records, they would rap, and it was hip hop that got the gangs to maintain the peace treaty. So yes, hip hop comes from the street, hip hop comes from gang culture, but its original purpose was to bring peace between the gangs and bring peace between the rival communities. So how it's kind of used today to promote gang life and promote violence is kind of the opposite of the origin of hip hop. So people having this misconception has been, often a challenge, and me having to explain this to different intellectuals. I've taken hip hop to many schools in New York City, libraries, community centers. I was hired to work in a lot of detention centers to use hip hop to help kids who had been in gangs and lived violent childhoods, to help them deal with their emotions and better understand the purpose of hip hop so they can help kind of do their own self-healing,
Okay, so let's talk about how far hip hop has taken you. Hip hop Save Life, this movement. It's taking you, how far has it? It's taking you to India.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about all of that, where it's taking you.
So I share with a lot of my kids who want to be in the hip hop entertainment business. That was my original goal, but I ended up having a hip hop nonprofit, an educational hip hop career.
Okay.
And I explained to them, that's my success. Through my Hip Hop Saves Lives, which is a humanitarian-based curriculum, I was invited as a keynote speaker to Gandhi's ashram in India.
Great.
I was a keynote speaker in Geneva, Switzerland twice at an international humanitarian conference.
Great.
I was my organization was commissioned by Desmond Tutu's foundation to write a birthday song and music video for Desmond Tutu's 83rd birthday.
Wow.
Our kids performed at the United Nations here in New York City. So many, I have countless experiences that have come from, me using hip hop, as I say, in its original purpose, to bring peace, to bring unity. And again, it's mainly to help children find their self-esteem. So I help kids learn how to rap and sing and dance and perform and, do poetry. And once they realize that they're good at something and they feel positive about themselves in one aspect of life, the principals and the teachers have said, it has spilled over into the classroom. Their attendance is higher, their grades are better, their communication with students are better because they feel better about themselves.
Yeah. Can we talk about your educational work with hip hop?
Yes. So in the curriculum, what we do is we educate youth on humanitarians. So, for example, I'll give the example of Charity Water because that's who I volunteered for. We would find a short video online, maybe from Charity Water's website, and show them what Charity Water does. And educate them on why Charity Water does this. Why is there extreme poverty? Why is there lack of clean water? And this is what Charity Water was doing. And let's take that information and celebrate Charity Water in a song, and also express your emotions and feelings about how you feel about extreme poverty and the lack of clean water. So we're giving these kids a global education. We choose humanitarians from their city, from their state, from the country, and countries around the world. So they learn about all these different humanitarians and the work that they do, and they write songs about it, and they rap, and they sing, and they dance, and we shoot music videos. So they're getting, I guess, the attention and the outlet. You're in math class, you're in science class, you're in English class. They can't wait to get to the hip hop class because yes, they're learning, but they get to rap and sing and dance about what they learned. So they have that creative expression attached to the learning process, which is why the children are so open. Normally, if you have a class where, we're going to learn about extreme poverty today, half the kids might fall asleep. They're not really interested. But you get to write a rhyme and record a song and be in a music video expressing what you learn about extreme poverty. You have their undivided attention. Great.
And that makes them remember everything about extreme poverty. It will.
Absolutely.
Wow, that is interesting. Really. So let's move on quickly to your clothing line. How did that start?
So this is the t-shirt right here. This is our logo. And the logo, the line is called BB Fly. It means Black Babies Fly.
Great.
And it stemmed from, as I was studying, so as I'm working on the I Am Black American projects, going back in history, studying my ancestors, I realized that some ancestors, their greatest plight was slavery. Other ancestors, their greatest plight was Jim Crow or the Civil Rights Movement. My generation's greatest plight is mass incarceration. So this kind of started in the 80s and the 90s. It was, really big business. And so this clothing line is in response to mass incarceration. What I learned through my teaching was if a parent goes to prison, their child is likely to follow in their footsteps. They've been traumatized by the loss of the parent, but it's like a lot of kids have explained it like, it's like my mom or dad died, but they didn't. I just can't see them. I can't be with them. I can't grow up with them. They're not dead, but it feels like they are. So it's kind of like, it's even more pain because there's no closure, and these kids, it affects their self-esteem. They get involved in street life. And, so what this clothing line does is we take 20% of our profit, and our goal is to fund regular trips, monthly trips for that child to visit their parent while in prison. So to sustain that parent-child relationship, not have that huge gap. Through our research, we realized some kids go 3, 4, 5, 6 years without seeing their parent because often they're incarcerated and the jail is 200, 300, 400 miles away. And if you're low income, that bus fare, that train fare, the food, it's just too much for the one parent who's home still trying to keep it together. And so my idea was like through this clothing line, if we can fund a monthly trip for children, to see their incarcerated parent, that can sustain that relationship and hopefully break the chain of that child following in the same footsteps.
So how many children have you been able to fund a trip for them to visit their parents?
Well, this is a brand new company. We just launched about 2 months ago.
Oh.
Right. So we just started selling our T-shirts. We've reached out to an organization called the Osborne Organization. They're here in Brooklyn, New York. Okay. And we're going to start funding trips for them. But because of COVID, no visitors are allowed right now. So our goal right now is just to sell T-shirts, escrow money. And then once the restrictions from COVID let children and parents, visit, then we can start moving forward. But right now, they said like 90% of prisons still are no visitors because of COVID.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so moved by this project. And I'll be excited that our listeners will patronize your designs so that we'll be able to help more of these children. Personally, I'm passionate about women and about children.
Yes.
So anything that has to do with children, it breaks my heart, really. So I'll be excited if, I would like to have 2 of that. I'll get one for myself and I'll get one for my husband.
Okay.
So after the show, I'll look for a way to get some. If you have them in sizes for kids as well, I'll take a size as well for my son. He just turned 7, but he looks like a 10-year-old. So he's actually wearing clothes for 10 years. So if you have something in that size, I think we'll take 3 of that, and that will be our support to your organization.
Thank you so much, Sheila.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So can you do a rendition for us, something about hip hop, sending a message out to the children, something little, so that we have an idea of what exactly it's about?
I'm going to see if I can remember this because, COVID, I haven't been teaching and performing in a while.
Yeah.
But I have this song, it's called Peace, Love, Unity. And the original purpose of hip hop was peace, love, unity, and having fun. So I would perform this short little rap for the kids when I would first meet them and introduce them to the class. So let me see if my brain serves me well. But it goes, peace, love, unity, and having fun. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. It was drums over guns, drums over guns. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. This is how hip hop begun. It was drums over guns, drums over guns. 1973, 811, extension of the break beat, made a little heaven. Oasis in hell, yes, we gon' prevail. But they didn't believe us like the checks in the mail. Kool Herc crash course, loop back and forth. 1 record, 2 record, not a dance record, cardboard on the floor, gang bang no more. If you got beef, better check it at the door, homie, because it's peace, love, unity, and having fun. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. It was drums over guns, drums over guns. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. Peace, love, unity, and having fun. This is how hip hop begun. It was drums over guns, drums over guns.
Wow, this is lovely, definitely. So what would your final message be to our listeners?
Wow. Final message to listeners. I would say travel has been my greatest teacher. As an educator working with kids, I try to highly advise them to travel and see and experience things for themselves. Yeah. For me, traveling across Africa, I've traveled across Europe, Central and South America, the Caribbean, to experience different cultures and see how people live, it gives you a mindset of understanding that you can't get from a book, you can't get from a classroom. It's priceless, and there's no other way to get it. Traveling to Africa and experiencing, different, like when people say, a lot of my friends say, what's Africa like? And I'm like, well, there's 53 countries, just like there's 50 states in the US, and California is nothing like Mississippi, so, Ghana is, a lot different from Senegal. And even close countries, like going from Kenya to Uganda, the culture is very different. Of course, there's similarities, just like in the US, each state, there's similarities, but they're so different, you can't. So for me, my final thing would be to travel, experience the world for yourself. Stop listening to the news. Of course, you learn things from books and documentaries and from the classroom. But if you really have a fascination to read about a culture through a book or watch a documentary, set money aside to go to that place and experience it in person.
Great. The people are lovely. For that, I can tell you that the people are warm. Africans are warm.
Yes.
They are lovely, very open. There's never a boring day in an African country. That's always
true.
Something to find and laugh about. So for that, I can assure you, and the weather is good as well.
Yes. So, and the food is the best. It's the freshest.
It is.
When you eat mango and avocado, it's just so,
straight from the tree.
Yes, exactly. When I was living in Kenya, I actually had a coconut, a mango, and an orange tree in my backyard.
Wow. Great. So where can our listeners connect with you?
Yes, you can follow on Facebook, look up Hip Hop Saves Lives.
Okay.
On SoundCloud, look for the Brooklyn Globetrotter. That's where my music is, on SoundCloud. And also my YouTube channel, Hip Hop Saves Lives.
Great.
Yes.
Great. I'd like to say thank you very much for coming on podcast to Sheila. It was a delight to have you on this show, as our first gentleman is going down in our history books, and I'm excited you came.
Thank you
your
so
stories
much.
And everything. And if anybody is listening to us, I'd like to put in a word and say that you should try and patronize your clothing line, so that we can help a lot more of the children to bond or try and connect with their parents again.
Yes, and the clothing line is bbfly.live. So bbfly.live.
Great. Yeah. So if you've been listening in, this is season 2, episode 13 of our podcast series, where we've been bringing your way seasoned guests with inspiring real life stories to share with us. Do not miss out on all these lovely experiences. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. We have a video presentation of this episode on our YouTube channel. Just search for Podcast with Sheila on YouTube and you'll find us. Until we meet again in a fortnight, have a brilliant week.